Moyamensing Prison, Philadelphia, 1895.
Come with me, if you would.
Want to live?
Pardon, officer?
Were you going to write down, come with me if you want to live?
Oh, no, I thought you were asking me if...
Because I don't think that's a very good opening for your autobiography. Come with me if you want to live. Seems like it's been done before, or will be done before. Preemptively derivative, you know what I mean?
I can't say I fault.
Besides, what sense would it make to start an autobiography like that? Telling people to come with you if they want to live. Don't you know who you are? Herman Webster Mudgett? Or should I say, H.H. Holmes? The most prolific murderer America's ever seen. Aside from Andrew Jackson, of course. Wait, do Indians count as people yet?
My boy, I've never murdered a soul.
Bodies, however.
I am a doctor. I work with cadavers from time to time. Does doing my job make me a murderer? Would they call policemen like you a murderer simply for beating a man to death?
Of course not. Don't be ridiculous.
Precisely.
Are you an architect too, then? Because that hotel, or rather, murder castle, you built seems more like a glorified torture chamber.
Well, I suppose if you draw plans for construction to completion, that makes you an architect. So yes, I am an architect. But I maintain that there was no intent for torture embedded within those plans.
Doctor, architect, wouldn't it be easier to just call yourself a murderer at this point?
Wouldn't it be easier to just call yourself a waste of tax dollars?
Yeah? What are you then?
I am the American dream.
Do most American dreams find themselves behind bars?
Is it really so far-fetched? I grew up in a poor family, but became an entrepreneur. I went to medical school because America needed doctors. The university needed money for my tuition, so I honeypotted a rich wife. And when the World Fair came to Chicago, I worked my way from the bottom and eventually purchased a plot of my very own land. I built my own hotel, an entire block in length, 3 stories high, in the fastest growing neighborhood, in the fastest growing city, during the largest public event ever known. I crafted my own elixirs and inventions, creating job after job after job. Yes, I've sold cadavers to science.
Oh, here comes the but.
Science needed them. Should I not be compensated for exploiting a market deficiency? You suppose I should be hanged as well? All I've ever done is grab myself by my own bootstraps and make something of myself, like a real American. So if I'm sent to the gallows, then I question who the real Americans truly are.
Come with me if you want to live.
Oh, come on.
Is it true that you even have a lady with the last name of Connor in your story?
Yes, but I don't see what...
Are you Arnold Schwarzenegger?
No! Come with me, if you will. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to song, nor the ambition of an intellectual man to be great. I was born with the evil one standing as my sponsor beside the bed where I was ushered into the world, and he has been with me ever since. No Holmes Barred.
Chicago, 1890.
Get out! Eiffel! Out! Eiffel! Out!
Indeed! Well met! Well met! Welcome again, gentlemen and gentlemen and not so gentlemen. My friends, we all know why we are here. Once again, I'm happy to pass along that our great city of Chicago.
Chicago!
Yes, our city Not New York or St. Louis, but Chicago will host the 1893 World Columbian Exposition. That's right. It will be our great town, despite having burned entirely to the ground nearly 1 generation ago. Yay! But we are already faced with great challenges. We still average about 1,600 murders per year. And of course, we see dead animals on every street within city limits because we have 0 municipal government to speak of.
Semantics.
But more pressing is that powers that be have wasted about a year determining where in Chicago the fair will be, so time is short.
Well, how much time do we have, Burnham?
In the interest of expediency, Mr. Hunt, I believe our work is cut out for us, and we shan't delay a moment more. In fact, it is quite paramount in this endeavor that we are all united in the understanding that we cannot waste any more time, and that work is to start immediately. For each moment, whether immeasurable or tangible, is too valuable to waste on common pleasantry, idiosyncratic greetings, and, of course, rampant worker floggings. Sullivan, what did I just say?
Worker frogs, if I'm not mistaken, and I have it on good authority that I never am.
In any event, I also understand that the world is still reeling from the prior exposition in Paris 2 years ago, in which the French accomplished anything at all. So now, it will be up to us, Chicagoans, nay, Americans.
USA! USA! USA!
It is up to us to show the world that we too can construct and host the World Fair. Look around this room. This is not a meeting. This is a statement, a testament to our capitalist spirit, in which we can convene the finest architects in America, therefore the world, and we are motivated only by the prospect of advancing our field, as well as the payment of criminally exorbitant salaries.
Well put, Mr. Burnham, well put. I presume we could add the matter of the fair's intricate landscapes as a key component to our motivations as well?
Sure. In due time, Olmsted.
Because a proper aesthetic of the boats in our lagoons is the difference between forging a historic triumph or a commemoration of legendary ineptitude. I would caution against such hyperbole, of course.
As you can see, his legendary eye for intricacies and other insignificances precedes his reputation. Allow me to introduce to you all Mr. Frederick Law Olmsted, whom you all know designed Central Park in New York City. And we are thrilled to have him here as our chief architect of landscapes.
Yes. Thank you for that, Burnham. Broadly, I intend to keep our fair's landscapes tasteful and our wooded isle laden with greenery. We will accentuate its natural beauty with foliage and exotic waterfowl. No man-made structures. Most importantly, there will be no steamboats. While I understand their utility within massive undertakings, I'd sooner ban all boats than to enable their insulting perversions of my visions.
Land's sakes, Sullivan. Take your subordinate outside, or at least put some clothes on him.
It has a collar on. Does that factor?
Well, of course it factors. We aren't savages.
There ought to be savages at this exposition, I deduce.
We'll get to that, Sullivan. But briefly, the hope is that a privately funded, ethically compromised police force will take the crime off the streets of our fair.
No. I mean, we need savages. You know, just round up entire huts of them from uncivilized countries and put them all together on display. Why, Henry Stanley recently discovered a whole tribe of pygmies from his persecutions abroad in Zanzibar. Humbly, I posit this notion for consideration. Would it not be prudent to acquire a family of 12 or 14 or so of the fierce little midgets?
Not if transported by steamboats, by gum!
Come now, Olmsted. Remember why we are here. This is the world's Columbian Exposition. 400 years to the day where Columbus discovered America. After all, what would such a commemoration be without the reap and harvest of cultures different than our own?
Reap and harvest occurs only after proper cultivation, Mr. Hunt. I would know that, as the director of landscapes, after all.
Yes, well, proper may have to take a different meaning. We don't have the benefit of federal funding.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Root?
If I may, Mr. Burnham, when Congress approved its provision to grant Chicago the fair, there was no mention of funding.
So, who is paying for this?
The city of Chicago.
Oh, wow! So, in other words, we have to make some of that there coin. Or, we just make every transaction so difficult to follow that when the time comes to foot the bill, no one will even know who to hold accountable.
Capital.
Be that as it may, we are still low on the most important resource, time. Our late start has ensured fewer than 26 months to build an entirely new city on Lake Michigan. Gargantuan buildings of unprecedented sizes must be built by the dozen. And Jackson Park's sludgy, unsteady soil won't make any of that easy.
Yes, but you and Mr. Root are exactly the men for the job, Burnham. You've already built skyscrapers on that quicksand gumbo.
You surely wouldn't have gone all out to recruit us for a job that was impossible to complete. Right, Burnham?
Well,
Later, at Jackson Park.
Oh my god, this job is impossible to complete.
A whole year of pissing contests about the location of the fair, and we come up with this?
the time to piss and moan about it was during that so-called pissing contest, Hunt. That's over. So now, we are putting our feet down.
Is that right?
He is right, Hunt. You knew this would be a challenge. And if we are going to consider ourselves the best at what we do, we can't rest on our laurels and tut-tut about.
I had not approved any laurels for my landscapes, Mr. Root. In fact, I hadn't approved any roots either.
I don't need your permission to talk about a metaphorical plant or mention my own name.
Talk of the fair is part of the fair, is it not?
Gentlemen, we don't have the luxury of bickering. In October of next year, the President of the United States will visit for the commemoration ceremony. We have been tasked with planning that ceremony. And 7 months after that, in May, the fair officially opens. By that point, the fair must prove capable of hosting hundreds of thousands of patrons for the entirety of 6 months.
Well, not quite 6 months.
How now, Mr. Root?
Another root? Motion denied.
It appears that Congress stipulates in its contract that the fair is to end on October 30th, 1893.
And
There are 31 days in October, so it technically won't last the entirety of 6 months.
That can't be right.
the point still remains.
It's right here, clear as day. October 30th, 1893.
No, I mean there can't possibly be 31 days in October.
Wait, is it a leap year? If so, I owe another lashing to Dirtboy here.
No leap years, no added days. I'm merely reading what the contract states.
Gentlemen, please. There will be many months ahead in which we can settle how many days are within each one, but we have pressing matters to tend.
Thank you for finally making sense, Olmsted. Now, if we all...
As we all know, a steamboat couldn't possibly complement the backdrop of our grand fair. Would it truly commemorate the journey of Columbus if we were to blemish American waters with foreign, unwelcome ships?
I have a question.
This matter of boats is hardly relevant at the moment, Olmsted.
If the coronation day is October 12th, but we don't know how many days are in October, then who's to say they didn't really mean for it to be October 13th? Or the 11th? How can we truly know our deadline?
Oh, blather on, it's simple. 30 days in October, April, June, our boats have no motors.
Time is of the essence.
Thank you, Root. Evidently, this matter calls for resources we don't have available out here.
A calendar?
Well, yes. Does anyone have one?
I have a sundial.
Olmsted, That is your pocket watch.
Same thing.
No.
Well, if you have a better way of knowing the date and time besides our personal assistants telling us, then I'd love to hear it. That's what I thought.
Burlington, Vermont, 1880.
Mrs. Brew, you wanted to see me.
Yes. Thank you for joining me, Mr. Mudgett. Have a seat. I know you must be busy with your medical studies.
As is the life of every future doctor, Mrs. Brew. But it is no trouble. I live right upstairs, after all. Do I not?
Of course. You have a home here as long as you pay your rent on time, Mr. Mudgett.
I've been here for months now. Can't we nix the formalities? Call me Herman.
I appreciate that. But there is still the matter of recent unpleasantries that I'm afraid must be discussed, namely about your roommate, Mr. Ingalls.
Call him Fred. I'm sure he would permit you to address him as such. You are the head of this boarding house, after all.
Yes, thank you. But I admit order has been hard to come by lately.
Whatever do you mean, Mrs. Brew?
Well, it's just... There was that skirmish you two had a few weeks back.
Yes?
You gave Mr. Ingalls a black eye. It's still fresh on the mind. One of our minds, apparently.
And it's completely understandable why it would be. I would be happy to revisit that matter with you, Mrs. Brew. But not before, again, expressing my deepest apologies for my fiery side. You see, Mr. Ingalls had been snooping through my belongings, and in a rare heat of passion, it got the better of me.
Right. Of course. How did you know he was snooping again?
He confirmed as much during our little Donnybrook. But my suspicions arose when I had seen the indentation of an unfamiliar finger. It was nearly fossilized in my personal canister of mustache wax.
So you know the size of your roommate's fingers?
Mrs. Brew, even you alluded to the fact that I am in school to be a doctor. You don't get into higher education without having a slight obsession over the subject matter, do you? A physician tends to take notice of physical features. How else would I know that you're a size 7, or that you spray your perfume behind your ear and then swab it with a cotton ball dipped in vodka to weaken the scent?
Have you been spying on me?
It's not always tactful of me to pay such a close mind. I do understand. But the attentiveness serves me well in my trade, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Of course.
Nevertheless, I am sorry for that disturbance. I imagine that as the master of this boarding house, you've grown to be protective of your property. I deeply admire this quality. As a loyal tenant, it helps me feel safe. Surely you can forgive me if your protectiveness has rubbed off on me all the same.
The safety of my tenants is my foremost responsibility, Mr. Mudgett. So how exactly would you expect Mr. Ingalls to feel safe here after you assaulted him?
Mrs. Brew, I have to ask, what is the reason for wanting to see me? This incident has long been put to rest.
It stands to reason, Mr. Mudgett, that there has been a pattern of disturbing behavior, which simply cannot all be dismissed to the fact that you study medicine.
And what have I done to contribute to this perception?
While cleaning, I discovered an atrocious medicinal odor in your room, and I had to investigate. And even now, at risk of your violent hand, I must inform you that I discovered several flasks of foreign chemicals upon investigation. The stench in your closet was unholy.
I think I may understand your concern.
Do you?
Yes. And it may explain why you've been rather apprehensive, yes? It makes sense. You saw what happened to Mr. Ingalls as a result of his curiosity, so it makes sense why you might be afraid of the same fate, does it not?
Yes. But there's one more thing.
Sure, it may be my room, but that room is in your home, Mrs. Brew. and I would never hope to make you feel uncomfortable, let alone endangered. I hope that's clear. I will fix this.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. Herman. There's still something horrible I must address.
And if that stench is upsetting to you, then that is enough reason for me to ensure each vial is properly sealed before storing them in such a manner. I thank you for your vigilance in keeping me considerate of this household. Shall we shake hands?
I still have to ask. I also found a box containing dozens of roofers' nails in that closet. Are they also for your schoolwork?
Nails? Oh. No. No, they're not for school.
All right. Know what? I'll just say it. Where'd you get the dead baby?
I beg your pardon.
Don't. I was sweeping the floors, and it wasn't until I approached your bed that I realized the odor of the chemicals had been masking something worse. And when I reached underneath your bed with my broom, I felt something.
Yes? What did it feel like?
What did it... Something that should be in a cemetery. And not something stowed away in my home.
Oh my. Oh, I'm sorry. In actuality, Mrs. Brew, I wanted to thank you for this assertion because I agree. I do, really. It brings me no joy to express that cadaver examination is simply inherent to the field I study. We need doctors, yes? And the world will have none if the doctors cannot study the human body. Infants are humans too, regardless of what side of the fence you're on about the whole conception versus birth issue.
So, wait. You got this cadaver from school?
If it were a perfect world, yes.
Meaning?
Well, cadaver procurement is a rather stiff business, I'm afraid.
Come on.
Universities don't have enough cadavers for their students. It's true, but it's comforting in a way, no? As if there are more prospective doctors than deaths. But I digress.
Yes, you do.
Students and even faculty at times resort to their own means of procuring this material, since the government isn't willing to provide it for us.
This is the part where you tell me you're a grave robber, isn't it?
We prefer the term resurrectionist.
They don't charge criminals with resurrection, Mr. Mudgett. But they do charge people who rob baby graves with grave robbing.
Well, that is an interesting theory.
Theory?
And one I will certainly ponder, but in practice, school officials implicitly encourage the act of exhuming graves. Some even do so explicitly. Few cases are ever reported because the police can't find their own asses from a hole in the ground, let alone an expired ass. Mrs. Brew, you weren't considering notifying the authorities, were you?
I must confess, after discovering a dead baby under your bed in my home, the thought of alerting the police had crossed my mind once or twice, but no, I haven't.
You haven't? Wonderful. That is a perfectly acceptable sentiment, especially regarding such a grisly matter. And it makes me admire your decision to have not called the authorities even more.
You don't say.
Of course. Your wisdom in confronting solely me wields a double-edged sword. You're advancing science, and in letting bygones be bygones, you're quelling these so-called grave robbings.
How on earth do you figure?
Think about it. If doctors had more bodies for practice, the people having their graves ransacked may not have died in the first place.
I don't have time for this.
And to be frank, our economy is missing out on quite the lucrative opportunity. Rather than incarcerating academics and physicians, why not instead legalize exhumation? It'd be a goldmine of an industry.
I find it harrowingly untoward to be lectured on industry at a moment like this. Why you would ever think that your response to being confronted with a dead baby in your room should include talk of digging up more corpses.
It was Hippocrates who said, "Healing is a matter of time, but it is sometimes also a matter of opportunity."
So you shoved a baby's corpse under your bed.
You see a corpse. I see material. When you see grave robbing, I see a market deficiency being strategically addressed. It may be difficult to fathom, Mrs. Brew, because these are hard but exciting times in our great country. That's why smart people like you and me have the gumption to pull our bootstraps and extract opportunity. Am I correct?
I would really appreciate it if you'd minimize comparison to each other at this time.
I merely mean to convey that you, as a landlady, have found a means to profit off of people trying to exist. I, however, simply profit off of people once they're dead. We're not criminals, just capitalists. Two sides of one coin, one hand washing the other, and life goes on.
I really do not have time for this.
Then shall we bury the hatchet, Mrs. Brew? I know I may not have the best track record, but I promise to bury that hatchet anywhere but underneath my bed.
If Mr. Brew hadn't just lost a third of our savings investing in the iron diving suit, I would kick you out this instant. But should I see another cadaver in your possession, I will have to seriously consider the possibility of your eviction, even if your rent is on time. Understood, Mr. Mudgett?
Understood.
Humor me, Mr. Mudgett. I understand you aren't straining your eyes to see silver linings during storms. You see capital. You see opportunity. And you see it within your studies.
I do.
But I must ask, what do you see of the weeping parents who laid their infant child to rest? Or their grieving that surely continues to this day? Do you see that when you procure your material? What do you truly see when confronted about the rotting corpse of an infant in one of my rooms, placed there by you? What do you see?
Something that is mine.
Today's episode of No Holmes Barred is brought to you by the Columbia Cookbook, Facts and Home Remedies You Need to Know by Adelaide Hollingsworth. Here to read one of her remedies now is Mrs. Hollingsworth herself, Adelaide Hollingsworth.
In the event of poisoning, it's vital that vomiting be induced immediately. My recommendation? Simply inject plumes of tobacco smoke into the anus by way of a pipe stem. Yes, this remedy really is what's printed in my book. I wrote it, scores of people read it, and they weren't even like, why? Why blow smoke? And why specifically through a pipe stem, Adelaide? Why not use a straw? Or the mouthpiece from my trumpet? I'm sure there's even a predictable rusted trombone joke to be made somewhere in there. I do apologize, everyone. It seems I got carried away. You ask me why I make this recommendation? Well, you already know my response. Go blow it out your arse!
We walk and we run and we work, rain or sun, with our sacks full of rags we go. Then we bark and we call, cause the news big or small must be told to all Chicago.
Oi! Enough of that!
Oh joy! It's the incomparable Paddy Prendergast.
Shut up, you newsboy filth. What if I told all you newsboys about yodeling away with those shanties?
Probably something about being a loser with no friends.
You aren't even sailors. It doesn't make any logical sense.
Neither does your potato face.
All your accents.
You told us you came to Chicago when you were free.
You went right back to Ireland after?
And stayed there.
Then came back to Chicago with an accent.
Ireland kicked you out, didn't they?
For being a loser with no friends.
And looking like a potato.
Imagine looking like a potato and still getting kicked out of Ireland.
Why, you're the little imposters with Cockney accents. And you're from Chicago.
You don't know where we're from, mate.
Never even bothered to ask. Just out here assuming.
Can Ireland kick you out for being an impolite potato?
I wish you could get kicked out of Chicago for that. It's high time we had a new supervisor.
You'll have a new job if you don't shut up and focus on today. Chicago has gotten the World's Fair, so the rags will sell themselves. Now be a good herd of warm bodies and get the word out.
Aye, warm is right. It's hotter than a $4 pistol in Krakatoa out here. Or maybe it's just the humidity.
You haven't even... I'm sorry, the what?
Humidity, he said.
First of all, no one says it like that.
Says you, mate.
Be careful on these hot days, Patty. Your stupidity with this humidity may prove to become morbidities.
Second, you're lucky to have been here as long as you have, even if it's just been for a year.
1.5 years. I've had 1/8 of me life hawking newspapers for you, Patty.
My name had consonants a second ago.
Speaking of eighths, do you have a fifth too? I could use a drink.
It's 5:30 in the morning. And you can't drink, you're 10 years old.
That's basically middle-aged, old man.
I'm 24.
And very mature at that age, arguing with a bunch of 10 and 11-year-olds. Where's that drink?
Sorry, haven't got any booze. But if you leave the potato face alone to ferment, he'll be 100 proof in a fortnight, I reckon.
Enough, you little skunks. You want to know where I come from? I'll tell you exactly where I come from.
Where you come from? We was making fun of that like 6 quips ago, Patty. Keep up.
What you so mad about anyway?
Yeah, at 100 proof, Ireland would definitely let you come back.
100's a lot, though. Make sure not to take him out of there too soon.
Is that what his mam said to the midwife when she was going into labor with him?
Patty could have been born yesterday, after a 20-year pregnancy, and it'd still be too soon for the world.
Patty, you fantastic ass. Were you born yesterday?
Impossible. He'd be a whittle-fiddling potato if he was.
He's still got the bruises, though.
Bruises must be from his man, too, huh?
You lads don't know what you're talking about. First of all, you work for a paper press, not a distillery. And second, I am your boss, and you will address me as such. None of this patty potato malarkey.
The boss of a group of 10-year-olds.
You've exceeded expectations, Patty.
Made Mom and Dad proud, then.
Of course he did. He's a 120-pound potato. What Irishman wouldn't be in love with him?
If you don't shut it now, I'll flog the lot of you.
How? Did you miss the part where we just established your 120 pounds?
Perhaps we should convert it to the metric system for him.
All right, then. Did you miss the part where we just established you're a metric ton sack of shit?
Much better.
I am Patrick Eugene Joseph Prendergast. I weigh 144 pounds, and my name has 19 consonants. And one day, I'll be the most powerful man in Chicago, and I'll have you three cleaning my chamber pots.
What a dark story arc for a potato.
Well, believe it, because when Mayor Carter Henry Harrison wins the election and is back in office where he belongs, I'm going to be appointed as Corporation Counsel.
You? No, the mayor.
We've corresponded.
No, you haven't. You just sent him those fanatical postcards that he definitely doesn't burn to keep warm in the winter.
It's only a matter of time, wee one. Once he hears my heroic story, he'll have no choice. For you see, in 1871, at 3 years old, I immigrated to America.
Did you say 1871?
Yes, 1871.
1871. So just in time for the fire that burned down the entire Chicago.
Mrs. O'Leary's cow started the fire.
Are we sure it wasn't you, Patty? Did you kick that lantern?
Is your last name really Prendergast, or could it really be O'Leary? He is Irish.
No, it was the O'Leary cow, remember?
Oh, the cow. So his mom started the Great Chicago Fire then.
That does it.
It all makes sense.
Enough slander. I'll fire you all.
Afraid you haven't got the authority for that.
Yeah, and if anything, no one takes you seriously enough to listen to you.
Surmise is 'cause you're a root vegetable.
In that case, please report us. I bet they'd promote us out of principle.
We'll be reporters because of our intrepid dirt digging on you, Patty Potato.
Only way to expose a potato is to dig some dirt.
Fine then. Have it your way. Take your paper stacks and get out of my sight. I hope you all trip and fall into an animal corpse.
We take new stacks from annoying hacks who resemble potatoes. Though the journalism's yellow, it's all by the finest fellas. We're the Newsboys of Chicago.
Thank you for listening to the very first episode of No Holmes Barred. This is an independent passion project, so please, remember to subscribe and leave us a positive review if you are so inclined. For bonus content and information on No Holmes Barred events, please visit noholmesbarred.com and sign up for our newsletter, Your Murder Castle Mailbag. Be vigilant for Episode 2's premiere, in which a racist gets tossed into a lake, among other happenings. No Holmes Barred was written and directed by Daniel Ciarrocchi, recorded, mixed, and mastered by Evan Kornblum. No Holmes Barred stars Daniel Ciarrocchi as H.H. Holmes, Root, and Dirtboy, Sam Sessa as Burnham, Dave Heilker as Olmsted, Matt Gall as Patrick Prendergast, Willy Landon as Sullivan and Newsboy 3, Danielle Lohan as Mrs. Brew, Steve Bortz as Hunt, Guard, and Newsboy 2, Jenny Kessler as Adelaide Hollingsworth, Robby Priego as Newsboy 1, and Tom Colegrove is your narrator.